Hey fam. To be honest, I really don't want this to be a Resident Evil channel exclusively, but I figured I'd weigh in on one more thing, at least until Capcom produces more weird inconsistencies for me to complain about. I really like Rose Winters. She's a cool character with a great design that I definitely want to see more of going forward, but by the end of her Shadows of Rose mini-campaign in RE8, I still felt like I didn't really understand her vague abilities much better than I had previously, even if I knew a little bit more about her as a person. We know that, as Mold Ethan's daughter, she's been imbued with powers derived from the Mutamycete, and she's considered extremely dangerous by the powers that be in the BSAA. However, she clearly doesn't share Eveline's admittedly rather villainous powers, and despite getting to use some special supernatural skills in the DLC chapter, basically all of these skills seem to be context-sensitive to her time in the cognitive world of the Megamycete fragment, and I think this is a really weird oversight on the part of the whole narrative. See, all we really know of Rose's concrete powers in the physical world is that her hands produce what she describes as a sort of sticky white sweat that she's not totally in control of. We're told that she's ostracized by her peers for quote-unquote being a freak, but visually there is absolutely nothing unusual or unsavory about her. This sticky white sweat thing probably sucks, but it seems like it would be easy to just hide with gloves. Maybe I missed a detail about those white veins becoming visible periodically when she's at school or something, but regardless, we receive a lot of lip service to her apparent freak status and the alleged presence of some vague powers, but almost the entirety of the DLC takes place in a metaphysical plane within the Megamycete, not in the physical world. Even if her powers were less context-sensitive, this would sort of frame them as manifestations of her will within the Megamycete's cognitive world. But this context sensitivity isn't even the only problem. Right from the get-go, I found it strange that Rose had absolutely no diegetic supernatural abilities to start with, despite all her talk of unwanted powers. Her mental communion with the Megamycete is a passive skill that she had never even used before, and she is utterly helpless against the Face Eaters until given a gun by Ethan. This gun, however, presents us with the root of what will become a larger issue in due time. Because all the main action of this story takes place in a metaphysical reality rather than a physical one, objects like Ethan's handgun and the protective barriers he's occasionally able to summon come across as manifestations of will rather than literal representations of said objects. Given what we know about how this cognitive world works, the gun is either a metaphysical manifestation of Ethan's desire to protect Rose, an incarnation of the Megamycete's memory of guns in general, or both. Even its inherent limitations, such as the need for ammunition, feel like a reflection of the Megamycete's memory. But it's not a literal gun, and it certainly can't be brought back into the real world when Rose completes her mission. And once Rose starts receiving actual supernatural powers, this distinction starts muddying the waters even further. The in-game description of her ability to destroy Sclerotia and stun the Face Eaters frames them as being fundamentally tied to the Mutamycete itself. Destroying Sclerotia involves tricking the plant into receding by sending out signals of recession. It isn't something that would have any use outside of this context. Stunning the Face Eaters has a similar explanation. It involves suppression of other beings imbued with the Mutamycete's essence. To be fair, these abilities could very easily have literal analogs in the physical world, but they fundamentally involve suppression of the mold, which shouldn't even exist anymore after the events of RE8, making these powers totally redundant. And even if the mold is still running rampant somehow, these skills have nothing but peaceful applications. They can't be weaponized against ordinary humans, so treating her like a dangerous Eveline-level bioweapon who requires constant surveillance makes little sense. Now, Rose does demonstrate some more useful and potentially destructive abilities in the final fight against Mother Miranda, but these two new abilities call the same two logistical details into question. Rose's Wesker-esque super speed sidesteps are imbued with Ethan's light, which begs the question of whether or not they're even possible outside of this cognitive world. Her giant Mutamycete tendril summoning ability, on the other hand, is the single most potentially destructive power she has, but even it seems to require absorption of Miranda's energy to use, so it's more like when Avatar Zuko redirects his father's lightning than it is like when Azula shoots lightning at will. Additionally, even if Rose could do it without Miranda's energy as a foundation, is it an extension of her body or a sort of telepathic manipulation of a pre-existing tendril? Because if it's the latter, then like her suppression powers, it's totally useless outside of this context, if we are to assume that Chris and Ethan successfully destroyed the source of the mold, and as such, the mold no longer exists. Lastly, I want to talk about a true plot hole that this entire metaphysical setting ends up conjuring at the story's outset. In the opening, Kay tells Rose that the Megamycete fragment could contain information regarding the location of a crystal that could remove her powers, but the instant Rose enters the cognitive world and sees the crystal, it suddenly becomes framed as a physical MacGuffin that will remove her powers on the spot, rather than a metaphysical object which will impart knowledge of its literal real-world location. Just a really sloppy little detail, which I found distracting right out of the gate. Anyway, contrary to popular belief, I don't like making videos where I just complain about things. As always, my critiques come from a place of love, wanting the games and franchises that I care about to be better, as I know they can. Overall, Shadows of Rose is a very compelling experience that largely accomplishes what it sets out to do. I certainly wasn't expecting to feel like a powerhouse in a survival horror story, and if Rose really is as powerful as every character in RE8 swears up and down she is, then I think the metaphysical realm was a really cool idea, and a good excuse to handicap her for the purposes of a gameplay experience in the horror genre. However, while it gave us the opportunity to get to know Rose as a person and share a touching reunion with the living memory of her dead father, I do think it did a very poor job of genuinely enlightening us on exactly what it is she's truly capable of, why she's a pariah, and why she's so dangerous. I just hope we get a real answer to this in the future.